Preface. 12 Steps for Change. It always starts with shame. Not the kind of guilt that comes from making a mistake. I'm talking about the kind of shame that sticks to our bones, the kind that tells me you're the mistake. I can't remember the first time I felt it, but I know it was early. Maybe it was when Mom scolded me for messing my pants. Perhaps it was when Dad went to jail and we lived in poverty for some time. Somewhere along the way I started believing I was broken, flawed in some deep, unfixable way. That shame didn't just sit quietly in the corner. It made noise. It stirred up pain, an ache in my chest I couldn't name. Some days it looked like anxiety. It felt like this heavy sadness that wouldn't lift. I didn't know how to talk about it. Didn't think anyone would understand. So I didn't talk. I just carried it. Entering adulthood, I found something that helped. A way to medicate the pain of shame. At first, it was just to take the edge off. A drink after work. A cup of sleep. A distraction here or there to numb the buzzing in my head. And it worked until it didn't. What started as comfort slowly became a cage. And then came the event. You know what I mean. The blow up. The blackout. The thing I swore I'd never do again. The damage I couldn't undo as I remembered what happened. Sometimes I didn't, but the aftermath was always the same. Shame came crashing back in. Louder, heavier. Look at you, it said. You'll never get it right. You are what they always said you were. The cycle just kept spinning. Shame, pain, medicate, shameful event, again and again like a wheel I couldn't get off. Until one day, I broke. Not just emotionally, I mean spiritually. I got tired of pretending, tired of hiding, tired of carrying a secret that was killing me. I walked into a meeting, not because I was brave, but because I was desperate. And something happened. I heard someone in their words. Same shame, same pain, same cycle. But they weren't stuck anymore. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was a way out for me. Recovery didn't fix me overnight. It still hasn't. But it gave me a flashlight for the dark. It gave me people who listened. It taught me that I'm not alone, and that shame dies when it's dragged into the light. Today, I still have shameful thoughts. I still feel pain. But I don't medicate the way I used to. I pause. I call someone. I pray. I show up. I tell the truth. And when I mess up, and I do, I don't spiral. I start again. Because this time, I know the difference between who I am and what I've done. I used to live in a cycle of destruction. Now I live in a cycle of healing. One day at a time. Chapter 1. Step 1. A new way to think about powerlessness. I don't have a drinking problem, just a thinking problem. Step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Cognitive behavioral training, CBT, is rooted in the understanding that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are deeply interconnected. When applied to step 1, this means that admitting powerlessness is not an act of defeat, but one of clarity. It's the beginning of a shift, from patterns of distorted thinking to the possibility of real behavioral change. To fully grasp the depth of step 1, we must first explore what it means to admit powerlessness. This is not just a verbal confession, it's a mental restructuring that challenges long-held beliefs. Like I can stop anytime I want, I just need to try harder, or it's not that bad. These are classic examples of cognitive distortions, specifically denial, minimization, and magical thinking. In the framework of CBT, step 1 interrupts these patterns and invites a new thought. My attempts to control this have failed. I need a new strategy. With that realization, the door to meaningful behavioral change begins to open. Admitting that our lives have become unmanageable brings the consequences of addiction into clear focus. CBT encourages an honest examination of behavior, prompting us to ask hard questions. Are our relationships suffering? Has our health declined? Are our emotions out of control? These reflections reveal that addiction isn't just a bad habit, it's a force disrupting every major area of life. It's more than inconvenience, it's dysfunction. This recognition is critical not just for insight, but for developing emotional intelligence. Naming the chaos and acknowledging the suffering it causes allows us to stop avoiding and start confronting the truth of our condition. CBT supports this process through several practical tools. One of the most powerful is cognitive restructuring, which helps us identify and challenge distortions like the belief that we're still in control and replace them with evidence-based truths, such as alcohol is controlling me more than I'm controlling it. Another tool is functional analysis, which maps out the addiction cycle so we can see it clearly. It typically looks like this. Shame leads to pain, which leads to medicating the pain, followed by consequences, which leads right back to shame, and the cycle repeats. This pattern must be understood before it can be disrupted. Motivational interviewing, resolving ambivalence, often integrated with CBT, plays a key role in this stage. It helps individuals explore their inner conflict, recognizing that a part of them wants to, the other part resists change. By highlighting the painful discrepancy between who they want to be and how they are actually living, it builds motivation to change. Applying these insights in daily life starts with honest self-assessment. Think back on recent moments when alcohol made life worse. Ask yourself, what was I thinking? What happened afterward? These reflections are not exercises in guilt, they are steps toward understanding. In CBT, these questions expose the faulty thinking and emotional avoidance that fuel addiction. Breaking the cycle of blame and shame is another cornerstone of this work. CBT teaches that unhealthy thinking patterns are learned, not proof of moral failure. Step 1 helps us move from shame to responsibility without the burden of self-condemnation. This is not about blaming ourselves or others. It's about recognizing that we need help and being willing to receive it. That brings us to the importance of accepting external support. Step 1 naturally leads to this realization that we cannot do this alone. CBT agrees. Change is not a solo act. It requires accountability, support systems, and professional guidance. Recovery begins with acknowledging that what we've been doing isn't working and that we're open to something new. This openness becomes the foundation for new habits. In control over the substance, we gain a different kind of power. The power to choose healthier coping skills, to build new support networks, and to reshape our thought patterns. This is where the real work begins. Ultimately, admitting powerlessness is not about giving up. It's about giving up on what doesn't work. CBT is one of cognitive clarity, a recognition that distorted thinking has led us to chaos and that the time has come for something different. It's a mental shift from, I've got this under control to, this is bigger than me, and I'm ready to do something different. Step 1 begins, as most meaningful transformations do, with a fearful, overly dramatic, kind, but a clear-eyed recognition. I can't do this alone, and what I've been doing clearly isn't working. It's like standing in front of a mirror after a long night out and finally noticing the spinach in your teeth, or more accurately, the chaos in your life. It's the first breakthrough, the moment you admit with both relief and panic that your own thinking has become your worst roommate. In cognitive behavioral training, this is when the mind stops lying to itself and starts seeking another voice to trust. It's not the end of the story, it's the very first page of recovery. If I truly want to complete step 1, admitting I am powerless over alcohol and that my life has become unmanageable, I need to stop defending, justifying, or minimizing my drinking and start honestly examining the consequences it's had on my life and relationships. Chapter 2, Step 2, Let Go and Let Possibility In. Let go and let God. Step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. In the framework of cognitive behavioral training, belief systems are not just spiritual concerns. They are foundational components of how we think, feel, and behave. Step 2 is an invitation to explore belief itself, not necessarily in a religious sense, but as a vital part of recovery. It's the beginning of a subtle but powerful shift, away from despair and toward hope. From a cognitive behavioral viewpoint, Step 2 encourages individuals to let go of the self, limiting beliefs that forced, and to open themselves to new possibilities. It does not require a dramatic spiritual awakening or a conversion experience. Rather, it asks for a willing mind, an openness to the idea that something, anything, outside our current destructive thoughts and behaviors might be capable of helping us change. The phrase came to believe just a process, not an instant moment of clarity. In addiction, people often fall into a mindset of learned helplessness, the belief that change is impossible or futile. They may think, I'll never change, or I'm too damaged. These thoughts aren't facts. They're distortions that CBT actively works to reframe. The shift in thinking might sound change is possible, even if it's hard. Or this is not who I am. It's something I've gone through, and I can heal. Then comes the idea of a power greater than ourselves. In CBT, this phrase is expansive. It can mean a lot of things to different people: a trusted therapist, a recovery group, the collective wisdom of a community, or even evidence-based strategies and tools that consistently produce results. For others, it may be a spiritual higher power. The key is that recovery begins to take root when we step outside the isolation of our own limited thinking and connect with something beyond ourselves. Isolation is often at the heart of mental and emotional function, and step 2 is the antidote. Finally, we encounter the phrase could restore us to sanity. This is not about achieving perfection or enlightenment. In cognitive terms, sanity refers to rational thinking, balanced emotions, and constructive behavior. Addiction thrives on irrational beliefs like, I need to drink life, or I can't survive without alcohol. Step 2 offers a new narrative that a better, more centered internal world is possible. It invites us to replace self-defeating cognitive loops with adaptive, restorative beliefs. To support this transformation, CBT provides a set of tools that help make these shifts concrete. Thought records, for instance, help us track distorted beliefs like nothing will ever get better and challenge them with more grounded alternatives. Socratic questioning invites us to examine our assumptions. What's the evidence that I'll always fail? Or can I think of even one time when things improved, even briefly? Behavioral practices, like attending a meeting or asking for help, offer experiences of change, small but vital steps that rebuild trust in the possibility of restoration. Step 2's application in daily life begins with identifying hopeless beliefs and holding them up to the light. We might write down thoughts such as I always screw up or no one can help me and begin to challenge them. Is that 100% true? What's the real evidence? It also encourages us to define, in our own terms, what a power greater than ourselves means. Is it a group, a sponsor, a faith tradition, or simply a system of support that's more reliable than addiction? CBT reframes power as any consistent, healthy influence outside ourselves that helps us. Tracking moments of clarity or peace, even if they're fleeting, also becomes important. These moments are breadcrumbs on the path to sanity. They are evidence that restoration isn't theoretical, it's real. Change is already starting to happen, one breath at a time. In CBT, belief is not just a feeling, it's something we can build through practice and perspective. Step 2 is the moment we begin to say, maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe I don't have to do this alone. Maybe, just maybe, healing is possible. It's a movement away from the trap of our own worst thoughts and towards something gentler, wiser, and larger than ourselves. In short, 2 is where things start to feel weirdly hopeful. Imagine someone standing at the edge of a mental cliff, surveying the wreckage of their best-laid plans, when a calm but slightly sarcastic trainer stands beside them and says, you know, maybe something bigger than you could help with this mess. It doesn't have to be a divine being in the clouds. It could be your dog, your group leader, or your higher self. From a cognitive perspective, step 2 is about developing what's known as cognitive flexibility, the ability to hold new perspectives, to entertain new thoughts, and to understand that the worst thing we think is not always the truest thing. Hope, in this step, becomes a strategy, and that strategy begins believing that change is possible. If I want to complete step 2, I need to set aside my need to control everything, open my mind to the possibility that something greater than myself can help, and start paying attention to moments of clarity, peace, or guidance that I didn't create. Chapter 3, Step 3, Turning it over without giving up. My best thinking got me here. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. In the realm of cognitive behavioral training, Step 3 represents a decisive turning point, not of giving up, but of letting go. We begin to shift from self-centered, impulsive thinking toward a way of living rooted in intention, clarity, and trust. It's not a passive surrender, but an active commitment to change course. At its core, Step 3 aligns beautifully with one of CBT's key goals, the replacement of rigid, dysfunctional control with flexible guidance. It challenges the illusion that white-knuckling our way through life has been working for us. This step invites us to examine the internal operating system that has crashed too many times, and to finally consider a software upgrade, one that comes from beyond the very mind that caused the dysfunction in the first place. When we say made a decision, it's not thought. In CBT, decision-making is a practice rooted in cognitive awareness. Many individuals in early recovery operate from a place of emotional reactivity and impulse. They react, they cope, they repeat. Step 3 is the first intentional pivot from reaction to thoughtful choice. It says, I can't do this anymore, but I can choose to try something different. This kind of intentional living becomes a new habit, formed by choosing behaviors aligned with values and long-term goals rather than cravings and chaos. Turning our will and our lives over doesn't mean we stop thinking. It means we stop relying solely on the thinking that got us here. For lens, the will often represents self-defeating internal messages. I have to do this on my own, or no one understands me, or if I don't control everything, everything will fall apart. Step 3 nudges us to gently release this kind of cognitive rigidity. In its place, we begin to cultivate trust in a process, in a community, in a mentor, or in a power that restores sanity and purpose. Importantly, Step 3 doesn't demand adherence to a specific religion or theology. God as we understood him leaves the door wide open. In CBT, this could mean a set of guiding principles, a core value system, the collective wisdom of a group, or even the calm, rational voice inside us that has too often been drowned out by addiction. The point is not what the higher power looks like, it's what it does. And what it does, when welcomed, is provide a direction that leads to healing rather than harm. Cognitive behavioral training offers practical strategies for making Step 3 real. Such tool is values clarification. By identifying what truly matters, be it family, freedom, honesty, or health, we create a compass for our decisions. Instead of letting fear or impulse steer us, we begin asking, what action today best reflects my values? Another tool, the cost-benefit analysis, helps us lead on what our self-will has produced versus what might emerge if we follow a different course. It often becomes clear that our self-guided path led to burnout, while openness to outside help brings support, stability, and growth. Cognitive reframing is another powerful tool here. Many of us equate surrender with weakness. T flips that narrative. Surrender in this context is strength. It's the recognition that clinging to what doesn't work is far weaker than trying something new. When we surrender control, we are not giving up. We are getting out of our own way. To live out Step 3, we must reflect on the consequences of our past thinking. What has our created? What patterns keep showing up? Once that's clear, we can identify where we now place our trust. That might be a sponsor, a recovery group, a therapist, a spiritual practice, or all of the above. Then we need to craft a daily decision mantra, a question that keeps us on course. Something like, is this action aligned with values, or is it coming from fear and habit? Step 3 is not a one-time event. It's a commitment repeated every day. The essence of this step is simple, but profound. The mind that created the problem isn't the one that can fix it. Step 3 asks us to acknowledge this, not with shame, but with wisdom. It's the point where we stop seeing the sole authority over our lives and instead choose a more reliable guide. From a CBT perspective, this isn't about religion. It's about clarity. It's a choice. From chaos to structure. From blind control to healthy surrender. From living on impulse to living with intention. Step 3 is about making, and not just the kind of decision we make when we're picking what to stream on a Friday night. This one matters. It's about your life. It's about admitting that maybe, just maybe, your way hasn't worked all that well. It's about releasing your white-knuckle grip on the steering wheel and letting something wiser help you steer. You're not being kicked out of the but you're finally admitting you keep taking the same wrong exit. In CBT, this is called value-based decision-making, choosing what matters over what's familiar, aligning with purpose rather than panic. It's not magic, it's strategic. It's not mystical, it's mental. Step 3 is the decision to let work and lean just a little into what might. If I want to complete Step 3, turning my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him, I need to stop trying to run the show, practice letting go of outcomes, and start making daily decisions based on trust instead of fear or. Chapter 4, Step 4. Taking inventory without the shame. Don't worry if you don't have a solution. Just make sure you're not part of the problem. Step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. In the language of cognitive behavioral training, Step 4 aligns seamlessly with the practice of self-monitoring. It's the work of honest observation, becoming aware of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, not to judge ourselves, but to understand what drives us. This step is not about shame or confession. It's about gathering the data needed to fuel transformation. Just like a scientist can't solve a problem without facts, we can't begin to recover without seeing ourselves clearly. Step 4 invites us to become curious investigators of our inner world. The phrase searching points us towards systematic self-examination. CBT emphasizes the importance of developing and observing ego, a mental stance. That allows us to step outside ourselves and view our patterns objectively. The 12 steps simplifies these patterns as resentments, fear, and relationships. We begin to ask difficult but necessary questions. What behaviors have caused harm? What emotional landmines trigger my drinking or acting out? What stories am I still telling myself and believing that aren't true? This is where the fearless part enters. Fearless doesn't mean being immune to discomfort. It means having the courage to sit with truths that are neither flattering nor final. CBT teaches us to avoid two extremes, minimizing our wrongs and catastrophizing them. Instead, we examine ourselves with honest curiosity. We remind ourselves, this isn't about judging me, understanding me. And what are we understanding? At its heart, a moral inventory in CBT terms is about uncovering core beliefs and recurring thought patterns. Often, beneath our harmful behaviors are entrenched beliefs like, I'm unlovable, everyone leaves me, or if I don't control everything, I'll fall apart. These beliefs cycle of shame, pain, self-medication, and more shame. CBT helps us trace the pattern. Thought leads to emotion, which leads to behavior, which reinforces the belief that the use of substance is the answer. When we map out those loops, we don't just identify the problem, we begin to sketch out the escape route. Logs and behavioral chain analysis bring this process to life. A thought log might capture a heated argument followed by the urge to drink. Then isolate the thought that drove it. They always disrespect me. That insight leads to reflection, rather than relapse. Behavioral chain analysis helps us map triggers, behaviors, consequences, so we can understand what leads to destructive choices and where we can intervene. We also look at early messages we internalized, often shaped by trauma or shame, and start to reevaluate their truth. To make this step manageable, CBT suggests structure. Divide your inventory into categories: relational triggers, dishonesty, fear. This organization turns what feels overwhelming into something navigable. Keep your language honest but neutral. Instead of writing I was a terrible person, try I used sarcasm to avoid vulnerability, or I drank when I felt rejected. CBT teaches us that insight without self-recipe for more shame. The goal is not to attack yourself, it's to understand yourself. In everyday application, Step 4 becomes the practice of structured self-reflection. Start with manageable sections. Don't aim for a dramatic reckoning. Aim for honest clarity. Stay away from extremes. This isn't a self-condemnation. Use language that's constructive, not cruel. And always pair new insights with compassion. You're not listing flaws. You're identifying the architecture of pain so you can begin renovations. CBT has a simple truth. You can't change what you won't name. Step 4 is where you start naming things. You name the thoughts. You name the pain. Not to wallow in it, but to finally move through it. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about getting your bearings. A moral inventory is not a confession booth. It's a map of the battlefield. It's how you begin to understand the terrain you've been walking blindly for years. What do we say at the end of this step? This is what I've been doing. This is what it's cost me. And now I'm ready to change. We move forward into Step 4, the infamous inventory. To be honest, it can feel like a treasure hunt in a haunted house. Plenty of cobwebs, creaking floors, and the occasional ghost from your past. But with a good spot and a lot of grace, it becomes something more like an archaeological dig. You find patterns, old emotional fossils, and dusty beliefs that never served you well. More importantly, you begin to see the difference between who you are and what you've done. In CBT, this is called behavioral chain analysis in action. Under what leads to the destructive behavior, what sustains it, and where new pathways can be built. This isn't punishment. This is self-discovery. And for many, it's the first time they've truly looked within and found not a monster, but a person worth understanding and worth saving. If I want to complete step 4, a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself, I need to stop avoiding uncomfortable truths, start writing down my resentments, fears, and harms honestly, and be willing to look at patterns in my thinking and behavior without excuses or blame. Chapter 5, Step 5, the freedom of speaking the truth. You can't save your face and your ass at the same time. Step 5, admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. From a cognitive behavioral training perspective, Step 5 is where the private work of self is public, shared, spoken, and solidified. After taking a moral inventory in Step 4, this next step involves saying it all out loud. The process is not for the sake of drama or guilt, it's to disrupt shame, to build resilience through vulnerability, and to invite healing through honesty. Step 5 begins with admitting to ourselves. Again, this might seem redundant, especially after all the soul-searching we did in Step 4, but it's not. Integrating these insights into our identity and recovery process is essential. It's the moment we say, this is what I've done, this is who I've been, and I can grow from this. In CBT, verbalizing our discovery makes them more concrete and actionable. We stop hiding them in our heads, and we begin bringing them into the world where they can be seen, examined, and healed. The next part, admitting to God, can feel challenging, especially for those uncertain about spiritual beliefs. But CBT frames this in a way that anyone can access, as a release of perfectionism, toxic guilt, and irrational responsibility. This is where we stop trying to be flawless and start allowing ourselves to be human. Whether you define God as a higher power, a sense of moral truth, or even your own inner wisdom, this act of surrender relieves the burden of having to fix everything yourself. Instead of thinking, I must hide my beloved, Step 5 says, I can be honest and still be worthy. But perhaps the most transformative part of Step 5 is speaking these truths to another person. This is where shame begins to break down. CBT teaches that secrecy breeds distortion. When we keep our pain hidden, we tell ourselves lies. If anyone really knew me, I'm too broken to be loved. Step 5 challenges that isolation by inviting someone safe into the truth. A compassionate listener, a sponsor, a therapist, a clergy member, or a trusted friend becomes a mirror, reflecting not condemnation, but acceptance. This is what corrective emotional experience. When we speak our darkest truths and are met with grace, we begin to unlearn the lies we've told ourselves. We realize that we are not the worst thing we've done, and in that moment, healing begins. Several CBT tools help support this step. Verbal processing, simply talking through behaviors and distorted beliefs, helps shift our internal narrative. Cognitive reframing, especially when guided by someone else's feedback, opens our minds to more compassionate and realistic perspectives. Shame resilience work helps us challenge the deep-rooted belief that we are bad people, replacing it with the truth, I've done wrong, of change. To apply Step 5, well, choose someone who can hold your story without judgment. This is not about shock value, it's about honesty. Name not just what you did, but why you did it. I lied to protect my image. I drank to escape my fear of rejection. These aren't excuses, they're insightful when spoken aloud. Expect to feel vulnerable afterward. That's normal. In CBT, we recognize that discomfort is often a sign of growth. Watch yourself talk in the hours and days after. You might be tempted to retreat into old patterns. I said too much, I'm exposed. They must think I'm awful. Instead, try, I did something brave. I told the truth, and I'm still okay. This is where new neural pathways are formed. In essence, Step 5 is where we step out from behind the curtain. We take the truths we uncovered in solitude and let them live in the light. This step disrupts the cycle of distorted thinking, secrecy, and shame-based. It helps us reclaim our story by owning it out loud, in the presence of someone who won't run away. The real power of this step lies in what follows. I told the truth. I faced the fear. And I'm still standing. Step 5 is the moment when the narrative shifts. Yes, it's scary. Speaking it all out loud, warts, wets, can feel like walking through fire. But then, surprisingly, there's peace, there's clarity, there's a human being across from you who doesn't flinch, who maybe even says, I did that too. And in that moment, confession becomes transformation. It becomes what CBT calls cognitive diffusion. You separate who you are from what you've done. You start to see yourself not as a broken person, but as a person learning how to heal. And that, truly, changes everything. If I want to complete step 5, admitting to God, to myself, and to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs, I need to set aside pride here, choose someone I trust, and speak my truth out loud without minimizing, exaggerating, or hiding anything. Chapter 6, Step 6. Ready or not, here comes growth. God doesn't make junk. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Step 6, in the language of cognitive behavioral training, marks a critical turning point. It's the moment when awareness begins to lean toward action. What covered about ourselves starts to loosen its grip. This step is not about achieving perfection or instantaneous change. It's about being willing, mentally and emotionally, to stop defending the very behaviors and beliefs that once felt protective but have become harmful. In CBT, this readiness is a powerful psychological shift. It means we've moved from observation to intention. We're not just naming the patterns anymore, we're preparing to let them go. When we read we're entirely ready, we might feel daunted. Does this mean we have to be completely capable? Not at all. In CBT terms, readiness isn't about ability, it's a choice. Many people feel ambivalent in recovery. One part of them genuinely wants to change. Another part clings to old habits, stories, and defenses. That's normal. Step 6 encourages us to explore that ambivalence head-on. We ask ourselves, what am I afraid of if I let this go? What benefit am I still getting from this behavior? Or is that just a belief I haven't tested yet? The phrase "to have God remove" takes us deeper. Whether or not we frame God in spiritual or psychological terms, the meaning is clear. We are not in this alone. CBT teaches that trying to white-knuckle our way through change usually backfires. Step 6 invites us to stop being to the point of sabotage. Letting go of rigid control and embracing help, be it divine, therapeutic, or communal, is essential. It's a model of collaborative change. The inner dialogue shifts from, "I have to fix everything," to, "with help, I can move forward." And what are we asking to have removed? Defects of character sounds dramatic, but in CBT, these defects are understood as maladaptive, beliefs and behaviors that once served a purpose but no longer help us thrive. Things like, "I must be perfect to be worthy," or "people will abandon me, so I'll push them away first," or "if I feel shame, I have to escape it with alcohol." These thoughts are not moral failings. They're responses, mental scripts developed in pain and confusion. But now, it's time to outgrow them. Step 6 is a conscious readiness to let go of these inner narratives, not with violence, but with compassion. We acknowledge, these thoughts once helped me survive, but now they're hurting me. CBT offers practical tool process. A decisional balance worksheet helps us weigh the pros and cons of holding on to a belief versus releasing it. Cognitive restructuring teaches us how to actively replace distorted thoughts with realistic, self-compassionate alternatives. Exposure techniques help us sit with the discomfort, fear, shame, uncertainty that these old behaviors used to avoid. And values clarification reminds us what we stand for, helping us align our readiness with deeper truths about who we want to be. In everyday application, this means naming your defects not as moral flaws, but as habits and beliefs. For example, people-pleasing to avoid rejection, or anger as a shield against vulnerability. Then we ask, what purpose did this serve? This reframing helps reduce shame and builds understanding. The next shift is from, "I have to change" to, "I'm willing to grow." CBT is not about rigid rules, it's about flexible, values-driven change. Readiness is not a one-time announcement. It's a practice. A daily whisper, "I'm not perfect, but I'm ready." In the CBT world, Step 6 is not about striving, it's about allowing ourselves to evolve, to heal, to stop defending what no longer works, and to begin surrendering not to defeat, but to transformation. So what does it look like? It looks like this. Your sponsor, sitting across from you, asks, "Is this belief still useful?" And slowly, maybe with some reluctance, you begin handing over your tired old stories, one by one. You examine the cost, you acknowledge the fear, and you let go, because the cost is just too high to keep carrying what no longer serves you. Step 6 is readiness without perfection, surrender without shame, and growth without pressure. It's the quiet turning point where everything begins to shift. If I want to complete step 6, becoming entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, I need to stop clinging to old habits that no longer me, honestly acknowledge the damage they cause, and become willing, deep down, to let them go, even if I'm not sure how. Step 7. The practice of humble change. Let go and let God. Step 7. Humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. Step 7 reflects the movement from intention to action. From a cognitive behavioral perspective, it's the step where humility meets action. It's no longer just about being ready to change. It's about stepping into that change with a posture of openness, groundedness, and self-compassion. This isn't about erasing ourselves. It's about releasing the patterns and beliefs that keep us stuck, and doing it not through force or self-loathing, but through steady effort and supported growth. Humility, as CBT understands it, is not self-deprecation. It's not the dramatic beating of one's chest. Instead, it's a balanced, realistic self-appraisal. It means acknowledging, I have strengths, I have flaws, and I'm not in control of everything, and that's okay. This perspective loosens the grip of perfectionism, dismantles shame-based thinking, and challenges the all-or-nothing belief systems that say, I'm either completely broken or totally healed. This mindset allows for gradual progress. It encourages us to move forward without demanding that we become flawless. Step 7 reminds us that we don't have to change everything all at once. We simply have to stay open to the process. When we ask Him to remove us, the concept of asking for help becomes central. For people with spiritual beliefs, this might involve prayer, meditation, or surrender to a higher power. For others, this might mean reaching out to a sponsor, a therapist, or a support network. The heart of this step is the same either way. We're asking for help with the things we can't change on our own. Activating accountability, guidance, and connection. We are saying, this part of me needs support. I can't do this alone. The shortcomings referred to in this step are not about moral failure. In CB terms, these are the cognitive distortions, maladaptive habits, and emotional reactions that keep us spinning in old cycles. Things like catastrophizing, avoidance, resentment, perfectionism, and overgeneralization. These are not signs of brokenness. They're learned strategies that have outlived their usefulness. Step 7 is about identifying these patterns, becoming aware of when they show up, and being willing to try a different response. CBT provides tools to help us walk through this change. Cognitive distortion charts allow us to see where our thinking has gone off course. Reframing teaches us to pause and ask, is this reaction really helping me? Self-compassion practices challenge harsh inner critics and replace them with thoughts like, this is hard and I'm trying. I don't have to be perfect. And daily mental inventories help us track our growth by asking simple questions. Where did I react from old habits today? Where did I show up differently? In practice, step 7 means defining your shortcomings clearly and compassionately. Maybe your short temper is tied to an automatic belief that people are out to get you. Maybe avoidance stems from a belief comfort is dangerous. Whatever it is, name it. Understand it. Then, set a realistic goal for change. Not I will never do this again, but I will try to notice when this comes up and practice a better response. Build a humility mantra, something short, personal, and grounding. For example, I don't have to be perfect, I just have to stay open and willing. Focus on reinforcing the process, not just the results. Change happens slowly, and success is often measured in effort, not outcomes. In the language of CBT, humility is the first step toward change that lasts. Step 7 is the daily habit of letting go of ego, ask for it, and returning to the work, not with shame, but with courage. So what does this look like in the real world? It might be as simple as a whispered prayer before bed, a scribbled note in a journal, a quiet conversation with a sponsor that begins with, I don't know how to change this, but I want to. This is where transformation takes root, in dramatic moments, but in consistent, humble acts of openness. Step 7 is the sweet spot where surrender meets discipline, where we stop pretending we've got it all together and start asking for help, not because we're weak, but because we're ready. As CB puts it, this is integration. We move from awareness to habit, from understanding to action. Yell into the void. We simply say, I'm here, I'm trying, let's begin again. If I want to complete step 7, Humbly asking God to remove my shortcomings. I need to practice humility by acknowledging I can't fix myself alone, ask for help through prayer or quiet surrender, and take daily action to live differently, even when it's uncomfortable. Step 8. A list for healing, not for shame. Keep it simple. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 8 marks a powerful transition from internal work to relational responsibility. From a cognitive behavioral perspective, it's not just about listing or building emotional intelligence, identifying behavioral patterns, and preparing for meaningful connection. This is not a guilt trip. It's a structured step toward relational repair, personal accountability, and self-respect. The phrase "made a list" may sound simple, but it calls for clarity and specificity. CBTing to generalize, I hurt people, but to identify exactly who we harmed, how we did it, and what thinking or feeling drove the behavior. What was the situation? What belief triggered the response? What was the impact? These reflections deepen our awareness and help us spot behavioral patterns. I lied to avoid conflict. I manipulated out of fear of abandonment. The list becomes a living document, not just a historical record, but a guide for future growth. Then comes the part that gives the list its weight, acknowledging all persons we had harmed. This isn't about wallowing in guilt. In CBT terms, it's about empathy. Guilt can be healthy when it inspires constructive change. Chronic guilt, however, leads to paralysis. Step 8 asks, how were others affected by my actions? What pain did they carry because of my behavior? What part of me, what fear, what belief justified that behavior at the time? This compassionate inquiry shifts us from egocentric regret to responsibility. We don't just focus on what we did, we consider how others felt, and we start to understand the ripple effects. The final part, became willing to make amends, reflects emotional readiness. In CBT, this is akin to exposure work, learning to sit with discomfort, shame, and fear without retreating. This doesn't mean eagerness. It means we've developed the emotional regulation to revisit painful experiences, consider others' pain, and prepare for constructive action. We don't rush. We don't avoid. We learn to tolerate vulnerability and stay grounded through it. This step builds distress tolerance and self-awareness critical to sustainable recovery. CBT offers many tools to support Step 8. Behavioral chain analysis helps trace harmful actions from trigger to consequence, exposing the inner machinery behind them. Empathy-building exercises challenge us to imagine what the other person might have felt. Guilt versus shame distinctions help us stay responsibility, not self-condemnation. And the willingness scale allows us to rate our emotional readiness. From 1, completely unwilling, to 10, fully willing. For each person on our list, helping us see where resistance still lives. Practically speaking, the first goal is to make the list. Keep it private, structured, and free of emotional overdrive. Focus on facts and patterns. Then begin to notice the thoughts that resist accountability. They hurt me too. It wasn't that bad. These are mental defenses that CBT encourages us to gently challenge. Talk through the list with a sponsor or trusted guide. Rate your reactions, comfort. Learn to sit with it instead of running from it. And remember, the goal here isn't to fix everyone or be forgiven by all. The goal is to own your part. CBT reminds us, we control our actions, not others' reactions. Step 8 is about clearing our side of the street. It's about owning our behavior, understanding our impact, and preparing for amends, not with desperation, but with dignity. In cognitive behavioral terms, Step 8 is an exercise in relational maturity. It's a willingness to move from isolated thinking to shared responsibility. It's the preparation for repair, not through guilt-ridden groveling, but through brave, thoughtful engagement. By Step 8, I'm making a list. And no, it's not a grocery list. It's a deeply personal record of the footprints I've left in other people's lives. Not to punish myself, but to get honest. With guidance, I look at each entry, not to shame myself, but to see clearly. My sponsor helps me keep perspective, reminding me, prison. It's my roadmap. It reconnects my head and heart with empathy, something addiction often severs. This step is where compassion meets accountability, and that's the beginning of relational healing. If I want to complete Step 8, making a list of all persons I had harmed, and becoming willing to make amends to them all, I need to stop the past. Write down names without filtering or justifying, and open my heart to making things right, even if it feels uncomfortable or scary. Step 9. Turning insight into action. Faith without works is dead. Step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 9 is where intention meets action. From a cognitive behavioral standpoint, this step is the real-time follow-up of the internal work done in Step 8. It's about taking what we know about ourselves, our patterns, and our impact, and translating it into direct, accountable behavior. This step is not theoretical. It is a deliberate act of repair, courage, and emotional maturity. CBT views Step 9 as a crucial exposure prevention. Avoidance is a major component of cognitive dysfunction and addiction, especially avoidance of shame, fear, or interpersonal conflict. Making amends forces us to confront these avoidance habits directly. It offers a corrective behavioral experience, one where we face what we fear, act with integrity, and discover that accountability doesn't destroy us, it liberates us. Made direct amends means reaching out where appropriate, speaking honestly, and acknowledging harm. But just as important is the next part, wherever possible. CBT emphasizes the importance of situational context. Not all amends are appropriate. If someone is deceased, unsafe to contact, or would be harmed by reopening the wound, the amend must be reconsidered. Functional assessments, tools used in CBT, help determine whether the intended amend is motivated by true healing or by guilt, fear, or even the need to control the outcome. We ask, is this for their healing or mine? Is this timing kind or convenient? And finally, the ethical boundary, except when to do so would injure them or others. This is a safeguard against impulsiveness. Emotional urgency is not the same as emotional readiness. In CBT terms, this boundary teaches emotional regulation and reinforces a pause before action. When direct amends aren't appropriate, indirect or living amends can be used, actions that reflect growth, restitution, or quiet respect. We practice thoughtful, compassionate responsibility, not recklessness cloaked as remorse. CBT supports Step 9 with several tools. Amends preparation worksheets help clarify what needs to rehearse the language with a sponsor or therapist. Imagery rehearsal allows us to visualize the interaction beforehand, reducing anxiety. Behavioral experiments help us test core beliefs, like, if I admit I was wrong, I'll be rejected, and often reveal that vulnerability fosters connection. Distress tolerance techniques like grounding, self-talk, and breathing practices keep us steady before and after each amend. To live out Step 9, we begin by planning each amend. Who is it for? What harm was caused? What behavior will change? We learn to use I language, I hurt you when I, and we avoid minimizing or blaming. Most importantly, we release. CBT reminds us that we can control our actions, not others' reactions. We are making amends, not demands. Our job is to act with integrity, not to secure forgiveness. After each amend, we reflect, what did I feel? What did I learn? Did my belief system shift? These debriefs reinforce progress and prepare us for future growth. Step 9 is about healing not just in our heads, but in our behavior. It's the point where we stop theorizing about responsibility and start living it. This step is about courage, respect, and transformation, one amend at a time. So what does it feel like? Sometimes terrifying, but also. Step 9 is about taking that carefully written list and knocking on doors, literal or metaphorical. It's saying, I'm here to acknowledge what I did, and to make it right where I can. And when that door doesn't open, or forgiveness doesn't come, we still earn peace. Because we showed up, we did the work, we stopped. In CBT, this is exposure therapy in action, standing in the storm of vulnerability and learning that you can weather it. Step 9 is not about fixing the past. It's about proving to yourself that you're no longer hiding from it. And that, more than anything, changes how you walk into the future. If I want to complete Step 9, making direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others, I need to face my fear of rejection, approach each person with humility and sincerity, and focus on taking responsibility for my actions, not controlling the outcome. Step 10. Practicing progress, not perfection. Progress, not perfection. Step 10. continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 10 is where recovery becomes a sustained daily rhythm. From a cognitive behavioral perspective, it is the shift into maintenance mode, routine of self-awareness, emotional regulation, and timely correction. This step reflects one of CBT's most essential skills, ongoing self-monitoring. It's not about waiting for trouble to escalate. It's about catching the early signals before distorted thinking and behavior have the chance to spiral. Continue to take personal inventory about daily review. CBT encourages us to assess our thoughts, emotional triggers, automatic behaviors, and interpersonal patterns. This isn't an occasional deep dive. It's a quick, honest check-in. Where was I reactive today? Where did I live from my values? Where did I slip back into old patterns? When done regularly, this awareness becomes second nature. It keeps our internal landscape clear. It helps prevent small missteps from growing into full-blown setbacks. And when we were wrong, is where humility and cognitive flexibility meet. In CBT, we learn to say, I was wrong, and I can learn from this. That one sentence can dismantle self-deception, ego defenses, and all-or-nothing thinking. Step 10 teaches that being wrong doesn't mean we've failed. It means we've discovered where we still get to grow. It reframes mistakes from condemnation to information. Promptly admitted, it highlights the importance of acting quickly. CBT emphasizes timely intervention. Catch a misstep early, whether through an apology, a journal entry, or a corrected thought. We prevent the emotional and relational damage that often accumulates when guilt or resentment are allowed to fester. Prompt action shortens the recovery arc. It lowers relapse risk, and it builds trust in ourselves and with others. Step 10 include daily thought records, quick logs of situations, thoughts, and corrective responses, mood and behavior check-ins, and cognitive flexibility exercises that help us see missteps as learning opportunities. Simple reframes, like I overreacted, but I can make it right, or that thought isn't helpful. What's a better one? Empower us to redirect our thinking in the moment. To apply Step 10 in life, set up a brief daily review routine. Just 5 or 10 minutes to ask, where did I show growth today? Where did I act from fear? What can I do better tomorrow? Track cognitive distortions, catch them, name them, and reframe them. When you're wrong, own it without delay. Use phrases like, I take responsibility for that, or let me make that right. These phrases, when practiced regularly, become reflexive, disarming pride and self-condemnation alike. Most importantly, Step 10 reminds us that setbacks are not failures. In CBT, we understand that relapse begins not with behavior, but with unchecked thought patterns. Step 10 catches those thoughts early. It trains the mind to stay agile, grounded, and honest. Step 10 is like flossing your cognitive and emotional hygiene. Daily attention to the inner world keeps our recovery resilient. Maintain clarity. It's how we practice humility and integrity without the burden of perfection. My sponsor always told me, think like a gardener. Water what's working. Prune what's not. Don't wait until the weeds take over. And that's what Step 10 becomes, a way to tend to our inner life with care, consistency, and self-respect. Language, this is relapse prevention at its best, catching the drift before it becomes a detour. Noticing, admitting, adjusting, and growing. Every day. If I want to complete Step 10, continuing to take personal inventory and promptly admitting when I'm wrong, I need to stay aware of my thoughts, words, and actions each day. Pause when I react poorly, and take responsibility quickly before resentment has a chance to grow. Step 11. Staying the course with awareness. Don't leave before the miracle happens. Step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Step 11 is where recovery deepens and becomes a daily. From a cognitive behavioral perspective, this step integrates mindfulness, reflective intention, and ongoing emotional regulation. It's the step where spirituality, awareness, and psychology meet, not as lofty ideals but as practical, lived habits. Even within secular CBT, daily practices like meditation, value reflection, intention setting are shown to lower emotional reactivity, reduce relapse risk, strengthen executive function, and support long-term recovery. Step 11 is about carving out mental space each day to connect with clarity, purpose, and the deeper source of strength, whatever that means to each individual. The first part, sought through prayer and meditation, anchors the step in intentional mental focus. Mindfulness meditation, a central tool in CBT, helps interrupt automatic negative thought loops. It allows us to pause before reacting, to observe rather than be controlled by our thoughts. Prayer, whether spiritual or secular, serves as a cognitive reason to express gratitude, ask for guidance, or simply step back from the noise of the mind. These practices increase our metacognition, our ability to think about our thinking, which enhances emotional self-regulation. To improve our conscious contact with God can be reframed in CBT as staying connected to a guiding framework. Whether that framework is a traditional higher power, a core value system, or an internal compass of truth, the aim is the same: to remain aligned with the principles that support our recovery. Conscious contact means remembering what matters most, especially in moments of stress, temptation, or indecision. This is the kind of daily practice that strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for long-term planning, self-control, and empathy. Finally, we pray only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. In CB terms, this mirrors values-based action planning. It shifts us from reactive behavior to thoughtful decision-making. Instead of asking, like doing right now, we begin to ask, what aligns with my values today? It moves us out of ego-driven urgency and into wisdom-driven clarity. We're not asking the universe to do it all for us. We're asking for insight and the strength to follow through. Several CBT tools support Step 11. Mindfulness practices, such as breath-focused or meditation, help reduce anxiety and enhance presence. Daily values reviews reinforce alignment between our actions and principles. Guided imagery, or mental rehearsal, can prepare us to handle difficult situations with composure and integrity. And intention-setting rituals help frame the day with clarity and purpose. A simple morning mantra, "I will live with patience and honesty," can set the tone for everything that follows. Applying this step means beginning each day with intention. Whether through meditation, journaling, prayer, or silence, we take a moment to reset. When we find ourselves spiraling into catastrophizing, overthinking, or judgment, we pause and ask, what's my higher path? We write down what we discover in prayer or reflection, reinforcing the CB practice of journaling for thought awareness. And we learn to use silence, not as avoidance, but as a strategy to calm, reflect, and recenter. CBT affirms the wisdom of this step. Staying connected to something higher keeps our lower selves in check. 11 becomes a daily ritual of intention, emotional balance, and growth. It keeps recovery sustainable. It keeps us human. Step 11 turns reflection into relationship with a higher power, with our values, and with our clearest self. My sponsor taught me to begin the day not by reacting, but by listening. Meditation, quiet walks, or simple breathing, I build a connection with that deeper voice. It's not flashy, but it works. The wisdom that shows up in silence becomes the foundation for how I live. Mindfulness is no longer a concept. It becomes a way of showing up in the world with clarity, courage, and peace. If I want to 11, seeking through prayer and meditation, to improve my conscious contact with God as I understand Him, I need to set aside time daily for quiet reflection, listen as much as I speak, and focus on aligning my will with spiritual guidance, not just asking for what I Step 12. Living the message. You have to give it away in order to keep it. Step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Step 12 is where transformation becomes a lifestyle. From a cognitive perspective, this step represents integration and service, where all the insights and growth from the previous steps begin to generalize into everyday life. It's about anchoring your new identity through consistent action and reinforcing recovery through purposeful connection with others. The first part, having had a spiritual awakening, reflects a cognitive and emotional shift. In CBT terms, this is identity restructuring. We no longer define ourselves by past labels like failure or hopeless. Instead, we see ourselves as people who have changed and continue to grow. A spiritual awakening might include increased self-awareness, revised core beliefs, I am worthy, I with purpose, and a deepened sense of internal peace. These shifts drive sustained behavioral change. Carrying this message means sharing the recovery process with others. CBT highlights that teaching and supporting others reinforces our own learning. When we guide someone through recovery, we practice empathy, sharpen our own our commitment. Helping others breaks the cycle of isolation and self-absorption, which are common relapse triggers. It also builds a social support system, one of the strongest buffers against relapse. The final piece, to practice these principles in all our affairs, is about generalization, a core CBT concept. It means applying what we've learned beyond meetings or therapy into work, relationships, parenting, and daily challenges. Recovery is no longer compartmentalized. It becomes a way of life. We live not just with sobriety, but with integrity, emotional clarity, and intention. Tools that support Step 12 include relapse prevention plans, based behavior tracking, and continued community involvement. Mentoring or sponsoring others not only builds resilience, it confirms to ourselves that we're living what we believe. We become role models not by being perfect, but by being consistent. In daily practice, Step 12 means supporting others without rescuing them. Share and show up without trying to control outcomes. We apply recovery principles across settings. We check ourselves for ego, fear, or dishonesty. And we keep learning, because recovery is dynamic and the brain thrives on growth and challenge. Step 12 reminds us that healing becomes permanent when it is shared and lived. It's not the end of the journey, it's the beginning of a deeper one. From a CBT standpoint, we've changed how we think, how we act, and now we sustain that by showing others the path and living it ourselves. Finally, Step 12, the path has taken me from wreckage to renewal, and now I share it, not with lectures or slogans, but by showing up, by being present, by reminding someone else that they're not alone, that they're not broken, that recovery is possible. My sponsor taught me that helping others is the surest way to keep growing. In CBT terms, it's behavioral reinforcement through service. We teach, we give, and in doing so, we remember who we are. The journey continues, never perfect, but always real. If I want to complete Step 12, carrying the message to other alcoholics and practicing these principles in all my affairs, I need to share my experience. Honestly, help others without expecting anything in return, and live the values of recovery in every part of my life, not just in meetings. Closing, The Great Mathematician by Jansen. There once was a man who traveled from town to town teaching the wonders of math. As he entered each town, he'd gather all the people and introduce himself by saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the great mathematician, and I'm here to teach you the wonders of math." As they curiously gathered around, he'd begin. First wonder of math is that 3 plus 3 equals 6, and they would all applaud. Then he continued, and the second wonder of math is that 4 plus 4 equals 8, and they applauded again. Then he continued, and the final wonder of math is that 5 plus 5 equals 11, and as they previously responded, they applauded again. He'd then pack up his things and venture to the next town where he'd teach his wonders of math. Then one day, as he was teaching the wonders of math, he received word that the master mathematician was going to be in the next town where he planned to teach. He got all excited and hurried to the next town. As he entered the town, he realized that he didn't know what the master looked like. He really wanted to impress the master and hoped that he would identify himself once he got there. But alas, the master did not come forward, so he presented the wonders of math to the people of the town. He then packed up his things and started off to the next town when suddenly, someone tapped him on the shoulder. He turned around. The woman who tapped his shoulder said to him, "You're the great mathematician, aren't you?" He replied, "Yes, I am." "And who are you?" She said, "I'm the master mathematician." He said, "You, a woman?" She smiled and said, "Yes." He realized he had just made a wrong assumption and a stupid question, but that she was. He asked her, "Were you in the last town where I taught the wonders of math?" She smiled and said, "Yes." He then said to her, "Well, what did you think?" Wanting to impress her, she said, "I think you like to teach math." "Oh yes, master. I love to teach math. It's my life." She then said, "Well." That made his day because he really wanted to impress the master. But then she said to him, "There's a few things I'd like to share with you about your teaching." The great mathematician was all ears. She then said, "You are correct when you say that 3 plus 3 equals 6. He got this big grin on his face. She continued, "You're also correct that 4 plus 4 equals 8. Again, he smiled. The she continued, "Son, you're mistaken when you say that 5 plus 5 equals 11. 5 plus 5 equals 10. To which the great mathematician dropped to his knees and said, "Oh my God, I was wrong. 5 plus 5 doesn't. 5 plus 5 equals 10. The master extended her hand to help him up and said to him, "Today, you have become a better mathematician. Before we can change, we need to know that we've been wrong. Once we know where we are wrong, we can identify what behavior will most likely give us the outcome we want. We've come to realize that following our stinking thinking seldom gives us that outcome. And yet, too often in life, we are ashamed to admit when we are wrong. But when we recognize our wrongness, own it, and change, we become better mathematicians, better human beings. Don't believe the lies the world tells us. We can become that better person. Honest, it works if you